The desert called me back, not with thunder, not with storms, but with silence too deep to ignore. Its winds whispered, "Return to the place where your heart still waits. Return to the door that never closed." I rode across endless sands, each hoof beat echoing the pulse of my regret. The falcon within me no longer sought the skies. It sought only a perch in the sanctuary of love I once abandoned, and as I reached the familiar gate, I froze, for nothing had changed, yet everything was different. The wood bore the same scars, the iron hinges carried the same rust, and yet the air trembled, as though the door had been waiting, unmoved, unbroken, unyielding. My heart whispered, "Here lies not just a house, but the threshold of your soul." I stood before the door, my shadow falling across the earth like confession. I did not knock, for how does a man who once left announce his return? The silence answered me instead. It carried the memory of her footsteps, soft yet strong, moving within, moving around me. Even though the house looked still, I remembered her voice, gentle like water, firm like stone. She had told me once, "This door will never close to you, but every time you leave, it grows heavier to open again." And tonight, I felt the weight she had carried in my absence. Years layered upon years, prayer stitched into silence, love hidden behind walls of patience, yet the door still stood, not locked, not broken, but waiting, and in that waiting, it spoke louder than words. I stepped closer, each movement trembling with memory. The earth beneath me knew my weight. It remembered the boy who once ran barefoot through this courtyard. It remembered the man who once left in silence. It remembered both. I placed my hand upon the wood, and the door seemed to breathe beneath my palm. It was worn, as though carrying the last touch of her hand, as though the years had not erased her presence. I whispered, "Beloved, I have returned, not to disturb, not to claim, but to bow before the patience that guarded this home in my absence." No voice answered, yet the air grew heavier with meaning, and I realized, sometimes the truest reply is the silence that refuses to push you away. Night wrapped itself around the home, but the door shone in the moonlight, a sentinel of love, a monument of patience. I sat before it, like a pilgrim before a shrine. For this was no ordinary door. It was the keeper of every promise I had broken, the witness of every prayer she whispered, the guardian of a love that had survived even my absence. And as the stars watched silently above, I closed my eyes and heard the truth. The door had never closed, not because of me, but because of her. Her faith had kept it open, her devotion had kept it strong, her love had turned wood into eternity. I lowered my head to the earth and confessed, "O beloved, if you still breathe within these walls, know that I have come to lay down my pride, to let the dust mark me as yours once more. If you open, I will rise with gratitude. If you do not, I will still remain. For even the door you kept open in silence is more merciful than the world that celebrating me." The wind passed softly, the night embraced me, and I knew, whether she came or not, this was home. I leaned against the ancient wood, listening not with my ears, but with my soul. For the silence of that house was alive, and within it I could hear echoes, the faint rhythm of her prayers, the murmur of her sighs, the quiet determination of a heart that had never surrendered to time. The moonlight painted the courtyard in silver, and every stone carried memory. Here, once she had placed water for me to drink. There, once she had stood with eyes filled with patience. As I spoke of journeys, as I spoke of dreams that pulled me far away, and though I wandered, her eyes had remained rooted in this soil, watering the house with loyalty, watering the silence with faith. I whispered to the door, as if it were her ear, "Assalam alaikum, O keeper of my peace. Do you hear me? I have not come with the arrogance of a man who believes time erases wounds. I have come as one humbled by distance, tamed by the emptiness of palaces, humbled by the silence of nights, where your absence grew louder than all the songs of the world." The desert wind answered first, slipping between the cracks of the wood, carrying my confession inside. And in that moment, The door seemed lighter beneath my hand, as though it recognized me, as though it forgave before she even spoke. I closed my eyes, and saw her, not as the woman of yesterday, not as the bride of my youth, but as the eternal soul, who had guarded this sanctuary with unshaken love. And I understood. This door was not merely wood and iron, it was her soul stretched wide open, a testament of her vow, a vow she never broke. I lowered my voice once more. Beloved, if you still dwell within, know that your silence has been my teacher, your patience my undoing, your love my salvation. I return not to claim, but to belong. For even if you never open this door, it has already welcomed me home. And in that instant, the house seemed to breathe. The air trembled with unseen life, and I felt, deep within, that forgiveness was closer than I had ever believed. The night wrapped the house in shadows, yet every corner seemed to hum with her presence. The silence was not empty, it was alive, holding the weight of years spent waiting, the patience of countless nights. When I was gone, I sat on the cold stone floor, my hand still resting upon the door. It had known my touch before, and now it held the memory of absence too. The air smelled faintly of jasmine, and I imagined her hands moving through the courtyard, guiding life with quiet care. How many nights had she spent, counting the stars through this very window? How many mornings had she risen alone, praying for a heart that wandered too far? I felt the ache of my absence burn deeper than any desert sun, and still I whispered, "My beloved, I have come, not as a conqueror, not as a poet of fame, but as the man who has learned that true courage is returning to what was never truly lost." A lamp flickered on a shelf, as though the house itself offered a small welcome. Its flame danced in the wind, casting shadows that carried her memory. I remembered her voice, soft yet unwavering, filling the halls with the sound of hope. And I realized she had been a lighthouse for my drifting soul, guiding me back even when I had not known the way. I knelt before the door, the stone cold beneath my knees, and whispered a prayer into the night. Forgive me, beloved. Forgive the years I wasted chasing dreams that were hollow without your heart beside mine. Let me remain here, even if only in silence, to honor the home you built, and the love that never left. The flame trembled, and the shadows danced, and I felt her presence closer than ever. It was a mercy without words, a bridge of light across the silence of years. The first birds began to sing, their songs trembling through the courtyard. The night softened into dawn, and with it, a promise lingered in the air. I pressed my forehead to the door, feeling the warmth of wood that had been held by her hands, imagining her standing just beyond, watching, listening, waiting. All the walls whispered of her patience. The dust remembered the prayers she had whispered. The air held the fragrance of her devotion. And in that instant, I realized the door had never truly closed, because she had kept it open with love, with a faith that refused to waver. I spoke softly into the lightning air. Beloved, I am here. I have returned, with nothing but my heart in my hands, humbled by absence, and guided only by the truth of my love. If you open, I will rise with gratitude. If you do not, I will still remain. For even this threshold, kept open by you, is more sacred than any kingdom I have known. And as the sun began to spill over the horizon, the house seemed to lean forward, listening, waiting, alaa. I knew that soon, whether in silence or in embrace, the reunion would come. The morning air was cool, carrying the faint scent of jasmine and dust. The door stood before me, a silent sentinel of years and promises. I raised my hand, and my fingers hovered just above the worn wood. I hesitated, not out of fear, but out of awe. For beyond this door lay the woman who had held the home, who had guarded my heart, even when I had wandered far into the desert of ambition. I remembered her hands, the softness of them, the strength of them, the way they had shaped my world without a word. I remembered her voice, the gentle music of patience, the unspoken prayers that had followed me even when I had turned my back. I whispered to the door, my beloved, I am here. I have returned with nothing but the truth of my heart, humbled by absence, and grateful for the light you never let fade. For a moment, there was only silence. The wind held its breath, the house leaned closer, and the desert seemed to pause, as if time itself waited for what would come next. Then a faint movement behind the door, a shadow, a presence, and my heart trembled like the first falcon taking flight. Could she forgive me? Would she open it? Or would the years of patience still hold the door closed, guarding her heart against the wanderer I pressed my forehead gently to the wood, feeling the warmth that memory left behind, and I whispered once more, beloved, I am not here to demand. I am here to honor, to kneel, to wait, because even your silence is a gift I will treasure until the end of my days. The morning light grew stronger, spilling gold across the courtyard, and in that light I knew the moment of truth was near. The sun spilled its first light across the courtyard, touching the stones, the dust, the jasmine, and illuminating the door I had waited before. Then slowly, a movement. The door creaked, not wide, but enough to let a sliver of hope through, and there she stood, not as the young bride of my memories, but as the woman carved by patience, forged in silence, shaped by unwavering love. Her eyes met mine, deep oceans, quiet storms, holding joy and sorrow in equal measure. No words were spoken, none were needed. The weight of years, the ache of absence, all melted into that single glance. I lowered myself to the ground, forehead touching the threshold, the dust beneath me sacred, and I whispered, beloved, I have returned, not as a conqueror, not as a poet of fame, but as the man who has learned that the greatest courage is returning to the heart you once left behind. She stepped forward, her hand reached mine, soft yet unyielding. The door no longer separated us. It had never truly closed. It had waited for love to find its way home. Tears blurred my vision, yet in them I saw her smile, faint, fragile, eternal. And in that moment, the house breathed again. The courtyard sang in silence, and the desert outside seemed to bow to the reunion of two hearts that time and distance could not break. I rose slowly, her hand still in mine, and finally understood. Home is not walls or doors, nor wealth or kingdoms. Home is the soul that waits and forgives. Even the stars above seemed to linger, witnessing the miracle of patience, the triumph of love, and the whisper that had never faded. The door kept open had brought me back to